San Francisco, Boston, LA, Chicago, Atlanta, and this is our first time in Denver, and I'm thrilled that I got here yesterday in shorts, and now I'm having to go to the Burlington Coat Factory to figure out what the hell I'm going to do today. So nothing like going from 80 to 40 in 24 hours. I lived here back about 15 years ago, and during that time there was the T-Rex program was going on. Does everyone know? Is that a familiar term? Is that still a term in Denver, T-Rex? I'm so happy because last night I actually went down to see a friend of mine who lives in Highlands Ranch and around rush hour. And it's thrilling and nice to know that all those tax dollars back in 2000 went to no good use because it still took me 45 minutes on I-25. So no editorial comments here, just saying. Just saying. All right, so we do conferences all over. We're really thrilled to be here. We feel like Denver is a great tech community. It's got a lot going for it, and we feel it's an underserved market when it comes to media marketing and advertising conferences. So we hope this is the start of other shows that we'll be bringing here. To kick things off today, we have our MC and program director, Ross Fadner, who has put together a great program for you today. We've got a lot of great thought leaders from the brand and agency side, as well as the consultancies and some other academics for you as well. We're also happy that not only all of you have come out to mobilize today from the marketing advertising community, we also have a great support from our tech community, some of our tech suppliers, and many of those are our sponsors here today too, who have stepped up to really support this event. So without further ado, I'd like to bring forward Ross Fadner, our program director, to take you through the day and give you a heck of a program. Ross?
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the first ever OMA Denver. As John mentioned, I'm Ross Fadner, Director of Event Programming here at MediaPost. A couple housekeeping items, though, before I get into the program. One thing, if you'll note on our agenda, we're actually switching the coffee break at 10:30 with the ad blocking discussion. So the coffee break is now at 11, not 10:30, and the ad blocking discussion will be at 10:30. So keep that in mind. And also, before I get going with my program here, I'd like to thank our sponsors, who, without their support, we couldn't put on shows like this around the country. That's Gum Gum, Sovereign, Ibotta, Epiphany, and Centro. So thank you to them. So as John mentioned a little bit, and I'm gonna get into this myself. As you may or may not be aware, OMA stands for Online Media Marketing and Advertising. We are a producer of trade industry content, both publishing and events. Now, that's not necessarily the same thing as being a cheerleader for digital media or digital media and advertising. We are not, in fact, cheerleaders of digital media. Rather, we're something more like interrogators, journalists, really, whose primary job is to get to the bottom of what's really going on in digital media and advertising today. So if you're a longtime MediaPost member, you might recall that in the mid-2000s, we used to produce these big shows across big cities like New York, San Francisco, and LA called OMA Global. The idea behind the global shows was to put the rapid emergence of digital media and advertising into a larger, bigger picture perspective. It was the quintessential show for the digital everyman. However, as the industry evolved, it became evident that you could no longer look at digital media in a vacuum. It had become too big and broad, and its parts too specialized. From there, we started to contextualize the digital advertising revolution, focusing instead on verticals like search, email, video, mobile, display, social, and eventually programmatic. We have tried to evolve our events business in lockstep with the industry's own evolution, which brings us to today's show. So what's OMA Denver all about? Denver is obviously not a digital advertising vertical, though I guess it could be considered a Colorado or United States vertical. You may or may not be aware of this, but we've done this very show before. In fact, as John mentioned, we've done this show in locations like Boston, San Francisco, LA, Atlanta next year. We introduced city-based shows for this year for a few reasons. One, we like broadening our footprint across the country, but more importantly, digital media marketing and advertising are facing some serious, tough existential questions right now, and they're universal to marketers, buyers, planners, publishers, and salespeople everywhere. Despite the advent of automated systems, which open the doors to greater targeting and the promise of one-to-one advertising at scale, massive headwinds like ad blocking, fraud, viewability, to name a few, are shaking this nascent industry to its very core. Consumers, meanwhile, seem to be fed up with any form of advertising that isn't completely in line with something they're searching for or what they've asked to receive. This is a problem common to advertisers and marketers everywhere, in Boston, San Francisco, anywhere where digital media is bought and sold. So, just as MediaPost tries to follow the industry needs to try and follow consumers. If that's the case, that means this industry needs to evolve. Advertising is not going to die, as branding is not going to die, and to be sure, marketing is not going to die. But, as with everything in the internet business, there will be winners and there will be losers, and in some cases, it may be a zero-sum game. We're here today to talk about how we're going to evolve in the face of mounting headwinds and uncertainty. We're going to start the morning off today by discussing one of the most important evolutions in digital advertising today, programmatic. Programmatic advertising has had both positive and negative effects for advertising as well as consumers. We start by examining the role of creative in a world where demand for programmatic is creeping up the sales funnel. Here to lead our opening panel, we asked someone who may be familiar to some of the local folks in the room, Suzanne Coriel, principal of the consultancy Growth Marketing Works. So please put your hands together and welcome our first panel, headed by Suzanne Coriel. Thank you. We're going to take a minute to seat them all alphabetically. I'll do that just now.
So we're going to have Suzanne over here. Okay. Corian, where did she go? Hi, Corian. You're going to be right here, followed by Matt, and then Kelly.
Hello, everyone. I used to be Suzanne Schultz, and I got married this summer. So if anyone's like, what, Suzanne Coriel? That's my new name. So the topic of our panel today is, can programmatic advertising tell stories? So we're going to talk about storytelling and programmatically, and transacting them programmatically. So why is this so important? And we all know that the story is important, and that the story is the emotional connection of why somebody buys. It's not that they're being sold, as Matt brought out when we were doing some Q&A but prior to this panel. But people want to buy because they, you feel a need for them, and they feel good about buying from you. So, and this is nothing new. This is the basic of advertising has been storytelling since the onset of advertising. So I think we can all agree that it's taken a long time for digital to be seen as a storytelling platform, and that fight is not over, and that we as digital marketers are constantly vying for more budget taken from the TV analog world. And that budget is still being spent in TV. However, regardless of spend, we don't have a choice anymore. I want you to think about TV and the onset of TV. It started with bunny ears, it moved to cable, and now we have a slew going from Apple TV to Roku to Fire to Sling. And then you got online video providers like Netflix and Hulu. And if you just talk about YouTube, they get 5 billion views a day, okay? So this is the market, even if the dollars aren't there yet. I just want to read a few stats here about TV. 1 in 5 households have cut the cord. 20%. That's 24.6 million households are cable-free by the end of 2015. According to Nielsen, this is the next generation. We're not talking about our mom and dad or even, us. We're talking about 21, well, there's many 21 to 34-year-olds in this room too, plan to cancel their cable or satellite subscriptions and plan to replace it with online video. Netflix and Hulu's revenue has rose at a rate of 29%, and 6 out of 10 prefer online video to live TV. So like I said, this is the market. Like it or not, digital is the platform for storytelling, and if you aren't already engaging, today is the time to drop analog, and we'll teach you how to bridge those gaps into, we won't teach you how to bridge the gap into digital, but we'll talk about how to embrace digital. And here's the beauty. You don't have to give up video to transact programmatically or digital. The programmatic landscape has evolved to a space where anything analog is now can be transacted programmatically. From TV to out of home to radio, it can all be done. So just to give you an idea, I asked the panelists how much of their client budget is being spent for brand and demand generation tactics within programmatic. And I got a wide range of our clients are spending anywhere between 15% to 75%. That's a huge range, which I think is a great opportunity for you to be able to hear from people that are doing it, full on at this point on this panel, to people that are just entering into the gates and heading down that path. So we're going to address how you take storytelling and apply it programmatically today. We want you to walk away with usable takeaway information that you can bring back to your office. We'll be doing this by sharing success stories and some not so success stories. And then for all your nagging questions that need answering, we have left 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. So let's just jump in now. Oh, yes, we'd like to intro the panel. All right. Corinne?
Hi, I'm Corinne de Jong. I work at IMM as an Executive Creative Director. IMM stands for Ideas Made Measurable. We are a full-service digital agency that has its roots in performance marketing and also are very results-driven. I was asked what jazzes me about programmatic, and well, as a creative, I had to think about that a little bit. I did come up with an answer. So the programmatic solution has given our creatives a lot of eyeballs, and these eyeballs are very targeted. So that is one of the most jazzy thing I think about programmatic. So I'll give it over to you.
Excellent. Hi, my name is Matt Dutremble-Nisbet. I'm the president of a company called Supply. Suzanne asked me this morning, are you a media agency? Are you a tech company? Are you a consulting company? And I kind of said yes. We like to take our end client's business to heart, and we think that we use media as an effective way to solve some of those business problems. So as long as we always keep the eye on the ball for the client, we feel like we're able to kind of push in the right direction. So we're based out of Boulder, Colorado. If you guys haven't been there, come on up. It's beautiful. And yes, sorry you guys missed 80-degree weather by one day. But thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Kelly Felston. I'm a media supervisor at 90 Octane. 90 Octane is literally right across the street. It would take 2 seconds to walk there if you wanted to come over. And what we specialize in is what we call top pursuit marketing. So really, just going after our clients and, really getting at what their goals are. And, whether it be a lead generation, sales enablement, or even brand positioning campaign, we're really there to strategically craft programs that are really going to get at what their top goals are. And then what jazzes me about programmatic? Well, everything, obviously, but I think I just really love how, using programmatic tactics, it really frees up media and creative teams to really think about the strategy behind it and not get really down in the nitty-gritty all the time of, the logistics and kind of sending out all the IOs and all of the, normal things that people say that programmatic is really helpful for.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Spears. I'm the paid media manager of display and social advertising at Red Door Interactive, which is an agency also really like across the street. It's actually a couple blocks down. Red Door Interactive is a data-driven, online-only agency that specializes in SEO, content development, conversion rate optimization, analytics, and cross-channel marketing. We have offices in San Diego and in Denver. And fun fact, we were just voted the number 21 best places to work from Ad Age, so that's really exciting. I'm happy to be there. What jazzes me about programmatic is that I love that there's so many new partners and emerging technologies that are coming into this space, and I really love being able to be in a position where I get to test all those out and find new ways to reach consumers and reach our clients' goals.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I am Suzanne Coriel. I started Growth Marketing Works. We are a B2B consultancy and help with media planning, buying, training, and any sort of consulting services around digital media. And I do lots of spiking events, so I like that too. So from a planning standpoint, in programmatic, programmatic is a transaction, the automation of buying and selling. So it could be considered a tactic a lot. It used to be considered a tactic a lot. Now it's just a way to transact. But looking at branding and demand gen campaigns and running it through the programmatic process, is this something that you usually have as a standalone strategy? Is it part of your overall digital mix? And just talk about that experience internally and how you recommend it to your clients. Emily, we could start with you.
Sure, yeah. I absolutely recommend programmatic as an awareness tactic, especially when it's part of a mix, because it really enhances the other efforts that you're doing. So we've noticed that when we're running paid media efforts, organic traffic surges during those times. It enhances, what you're doing with print, outdoor, and especially now in this day and age where there's like the multi-screen phenomenon where people are actually on their phones while they're watching TV, especially during commercials. And so you could be watching, 2 hours of TV, but really consuming like 4 hours of content. So I think it's really important that in that scenario to move to programmatic, because people are ignoring your commercials on television and they're on their phone. And so that's when programmatic can come in and really tag team that story. Also, it's a great awareness tactic over direct buys because it is a lower cost and more efficient and allows you to reach more users with your impressions. So really expanding the awareness there too.
And, there could be direct buys now programmatically even.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing anything at Red Door from a direct buy perspective through a PMP, or I'm sort of jumping ahead here, but.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we are. Well, we have only once. We just kind of usually keep it separate, like we do a direct buy or we just do like the remnant, buying everything programmatically. But we were recently faced in a situation where one of my clients, Bosch, the home appliances manufacturer, wanted to use a specific partner because they perform really, really well for them for all of their campaigns. But when you're running so many different campaigns with them, they were worried that it would kind of cannibalize each campaign, like this kitchen campaign would cannibalize this kitchen campaign. And so they said, we want to keep the audiences separate and try to keep them separate as much as possible, even though they're like the same audience and the same goals and almost the same message. So we reached out to this partner that works so well, Acuity, and they recommended that we do private inventory buy, and we basically just negotiated a CPM with them, which is more expensive than a programmatic buy, but a lot less expensive than just full-on direct. And we picked it from a list of deals that they had offered. So in this case, it was like Condé Nast and Time, kind of just like a mix between remnant and direct inventory, I guess. And it's only been running for a couple weeks, but so far it actually is not performing that well. So it's just not leading that many people to the site, and it's really not driving that many conversions. So I don't think it's a tactic that I would want to test out again to see if this is just like a one-off thing. But otherwise, I think it's programmatic is performing better than the private inventory.
It's interesting. So what you're referencing programmatic is
like
the open
remnant.
Exchange.
Yes, so like remnant inventory,
real-time
yeah.
bidding, open exchange, where you're buying based on impression versus going to a private marketplace or having a guaranteed buy with a certain publisher. And you could transact that programmatically.
Yeah.
And you were solving a solution of we want to find new audiences and not overlap what we're doing in the open market. So we're going to go into this private exchange and find audiences there. But it sounds to me like you're having a trouble time scaling and getting performance out of that. So that's the world we live in. It's a test and learn, test and learn.
Exactly. I mean, I'm glad we tested it, so now we know.
And Kelly, how are you guys approaching the mix and branding, demand gen, and with programmatic at 90 Octane?
Yeah, so I definitely think no matter what, if there's a branding campaign coming up, I will 100% always consider programmatic. And I feel like we're all kind of switching how we're even talking about programmatic, because like you said, we used to say programmatic is a tactic, but programmatic is kind of becoming a way that we just naturally are buying media. It's kind of inserted itself in every different aspect. So, you know, when there is a branding campaign, no matter what, I always think there will be some of those kind of site direct buys and sponsorships and things that you can't always do on the open exchange or even do programmatically at this time. But I also think, like Emily was saying, just for that wide scale reach, it's really important to always incorporate some sort of programmatic strategy. And, you know, a lot of times too, I feel like our clients will come to us and they have an idea of who their audience is, but sometimes that digital audience doesn't always match who their perceived audience is. So by using programmatic, you can really shoot out, you know, that branding message across a wide variety of sites and places. And you can take a ton of learnings from that to go back to the client and say, you know, I know you thought that this was your target audience, but they're not really responding, and we're seeing this audience pop. Let's kind of focus some messaging there, maybe alter messaging for who you thought your audience was, and you know, it gives you that ability to really test all of those different segments and all your prospects.
Excellent. So moving into, you know, traditional versus, you know, transacting programmatically from a branding, you know, standpoint, we really want to understand why. You know, what are the advantages that come with this process, and maybe disadvantages too. And Matt, do you want to talk about this?
The advantages of using programmatic in
versus
brand
traditional.
Yeah, actually, Kelly touched on a really interesting part, and I hope that you guys came and paid some cash to come here, and I hope that we give you some tidbits that you can go home with and put into action. So I really do think from a programmatic standpoint, there's a lot of great opportunities in this world where lots of times it's competitor share. You're trying to steal a share from one of your other competitors, and so it's not a secret anymore. Everybody has some sort of programmatic capability. So to Kelly's point, though, there's a great opportunity to kind of find new audiences that maybe you weren't thinking of. So you may be looking for a certain soccer mom to sell your minivan for, and what you're really not expecting is that there's a host of men who view it as a tool, the right tool for the job. And so you start finding these nuggets of information that could affect creative, could affect your buying decisions, could affect your targeting decisions, your geography, could affect things like product development down the line. So I think there's so many great opportunities because it is flexible, audience-based, less expensive. You take out the middleman, so you're cutting out a lot of the fat that requires the media to work 4 or 5, sometimes 10 times as hard for these direct buys versus programmatic. So kind of a few of the nuggets of why I think it's beneficial.
Absolutely. You know, the ability to measure everything, which could be the double-edged sword, right?
It is.
But at the end of the day, performance and efficiencies is what, you know, we're talking about here. A lot more malleable than just like that ad on television, and how is it working. So sort of shifting gears a little bit, you know, this doesn't all happen overnight and all of a sudden all the teams are working collaboratively together. And from an agency structure, I would like to ask Corinne, right? Corinne, yeah. How to best engage in collaborative environments with creative and media?
Yeah, that's a great question. At IMM, which is in Boulder, by the way, I forgot to mention that. We value collaboration, and it's not just collaboration between media and creative. We include the data and technology team with any project that we start. I have never believed that creative ideas should only live within creative. I think it is, especially in a company where a media department is almost double the size of the creative department, we need to include media to start any project, because they are on the forefront of technology. They are on the forefront of what best media unit to use in any type of project. So even in new business pitches, where we usually start together. We don't start separately. So this really has worked very well in our company, because now we even in front of new potential clients, we sit together. We don't sit separate. We present our work together. We present our work as a media strategy and a creative strategy together. So I really urge anyone that has separate work streams in your companies to actually put them together, because the amount of information and the amount of technology know-how in the media departments are just staggering, and they really, really work well when you put that together with creative. And then when we have been put together, then we as creatives can go out our separate ways, and we can concentrate on our messaging, we can concentrate on our content, and we can concentrate on what we do best, and that is actually doing the creative.
Emily, do you have anything to share with that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I just as you said, sometimes it's we have clients that create their creatives in-house, and sometimes they use Red Door's creative services. So in times where I'm not as involved in the creative process, or paid media isn't involved in the creative process, it's more challenging to really tell that story, and love when we can collaborate together and share what's worked in the past. And also, I feel like my role in paid media is to kind of be more of like the bad guy and say like, sorry, this has to be on a 15-second loop, and this has to have this border. And although that's not like very creative, but it's really important, because I've noticed that delays the launch time all the time when you don't bring when the paid media person doesn't tell the creative team what platforms we're running on, what the specs are, what the rules are. And so that's kind of what is a really important role that I think people don't always remember about. It's not just the creative process, it's the technical specs as well.
Yeah, I think you brought up, it's a great segue, that challenge. And in the ideal world, that collaborative process is it's what we strive for every day. But in the actual world, it can get challenging, and and we naturally contract into our what's comfortable, which is acting in the silos. And Matt, Kelly, I'd like you to speak to this isn't a bash on creative by any means, but what is the biggest challenge?
You're outnumbered.
Yeah. You'll have your chance too. But what is your biggest challenge in communicating effectively with the creative, and what are some ways, best practices, that collaboration can be more, true to itself?
I think, there's always those challenges, and I think one of the biggest challenges is like what Emily said, when your creative is not being made in-house. So at 90, we have a pretty solid crew, and if we're creating that creative in-house, we're really communicating with our creative team. But when it's on the client end, it's kind of, you have your clients over there, but then you also have their creative teams that you might not always have that communication with. I think one of the most important things is really getting everyone in the room and talking through those media plans and kind of what you're thinking to, do for the next campaign you're coming up with, because it's really hard when you say, okay, we're going to start making these really cool big banners, but we're going to use our 300 by 250s, and you just have to fit that stuff in this 970 by 250, and it looks crappy at the end of the day. So it's really that communication, I think, of where is it going to be, what's the ideal look like, kind of examples too. I think that's always important for our creative team, is kind of seeing what's worked in the past in those kind of places, and just really communicating who's going to see it, where it's going to be, and kind of just really the story you're trying to tell, and then the consumer journey of how they're going to see that and kind of engage with the brand ideally.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to say that, and everybody does, and we do it, and everybody does it. Everybody says that creative and media get together at the front, and we all walk down the same road together, hand in hand, and it always works seamlessly. I think that in truth, people have egos, both on the media side, on the creative side, and that's a good thing. People are proud of what they do. They're proud of what they know how to do. Nobody wants to be told what to do, right? So, from my experience, the best way to make it work well is to sell your idea in. So, show them the passion for why you think it's a good idea. Make it visual when you can. Creatives are visual storytellers and want to be able to envision this, and so I think it's incumbent upon people that spend more time on the media side of the house to really sell in your idea. I think that's important of anything. If you're selling it to the client, if you're selling it to the creative team, you need to be pitching the idea like it's something that you truly believe in. And if you don't, then throw it away. It's probably not that good of an idea.
Isn't there a little bit of, like, how do you navigate, God, they already know this. You know, like, I don't want to, you know, review this media, this tactic or this application and make them, you know, think that I don't think that they know what I'm doing. You know, how do you navigate that water by being, because I love that idea. I love that selling through to the creative team, but also not offending them that, you know, they just don't know what you're doing. Like, how do you navigate that?
I think everybody likes to learn new cool stuff. And so it's, if you're really an open, collaborative team, then people are going to be jazzed to find out new things, new ways. Oh, Geico 5-second pre-roll ad. How's a new way to hack media and how it's actually being consumed? And so when you don't eat, breathe, and live that day to day, I think if you can bring in some of these nuggets, actually, you know what, completion rates are awful. You know, people really just wait to hit that skip button. And that's a little piece of wisdom that when you can get together and you go, wow, what's a cool way where we do that? And people go, now I have to watch an ad to get to what I really want to do. If you can make it a cool story and it's something that you get how people are actually interacting, I think that the creative teams, I usually find, are very welcoming to saying, like, yeah, we want to be able to have you as our eyes and ears in this part of the world. And likewise, we like to soak up what it is, how they know how to do things that maybe we don't look at it the same way.
Yeah, and that is true. As a creative lead, my team is actually asking usually what the new media units are, what the new cool new media units are. And that answer lies in the media department. And I think every time they come together and they actually talk, it actually has nothing to do with ego. It's like if you see the result that comes out of it, especially when you're in a company that's results driven or that wants to do that does a lot of different types of banners. It's nice to do something different. And that's what the media team will bring to us. They will bring us that Facebook canvas that we didn't know about, and that now gives us an opportunity to really tell a story much, much more in depth. It's basically a microsite that fully takes over your mobile device. So that's it's not that much anymore about ego or about who comes up with what idea. It's more like what's the best creative result that you can get.
Do you have anything formalized at IMM that you bring the media and creative teams together to have these brainstorming sessions, or is it reactive based?
It's not formal. Two of my media members are sitting, so I can't lie about it. But it's not formalized. But I am relatively new at IMM. I've been there 6 months. And my attempt is, when I got hired, my ask was, make stuff more collaborative. And not just with the media department, but with the data and analytics department and with the client partnerships. And that's when things move so fast, we do need to, it's a matter of communication. You just need to talk to each other. You need to keep on talking to each other. And it's not all via email either. You have to have that face-to-face communication. And once you got that established, the collaboration comes automatically after that.
Well, we also want to give you your chance to talk about the biggest challenges with media.
All right. When you asked me that question, I identified two biggest challenges for a creative that works very, very closely with the media department. One is trying to keep up with technology. It's basically impossible as a creative. We cannot by ourselves keep up with every new thing that comes out, every new way of doing a display ad, every new way of doing a media unit. And it's because the creative and media work at different speeds. The media departments, it's all about speed. They do it with a keystroke. They press a key, it goes out there in the black universe. And but for creatives, we try to keep up with that speed, and it's difficult. And the way, you have dynamic creative, and we can speed up our creative process, but we still need our brainstorms, and we still need to put pen on paper, believe it or not. And then we go to the computer and we create our creative. So that is one of the challenges. The second one is, as creatives, we are asked to rely solely on technology or on data results if we want to keep up with that speed. And creatives simply don't work that way. We always think about the human factor. We always think, what is at the end of our creative? It's a person. And this person might have a bad day, or that person might not react the way the data has shown. And so we are always skeptical. And I think a perfect example of data and data results and data reports is what happened last week. All the data showed a certain result, and that result didn't happen. A completely different result happened. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, you've truly lived in a bubble. But that's a perfect example of how not to blindly follow the data and the data reports. Now, we talked about collaboration just before this, and especially the first point I was talking about, keeping up with technology. When you collaborate closely with your media department, that challenge, which is our biggest challenge, probably can be solved with 80%. So that's my answer to your question. Yeah.
I think that's very insightful because there's that frustration that happens, but it's the elephant in the room, and nobody wants to talk about it directly. And so, just providing that unfiltered insight, I think, helps us see things as from a media team, maybe how we can be more empathetic, or how to work collaboratively from looking at it from your point of view. So the next, we haven't really talked about how do we storytell, programmatically, and what are those tactics? And so this is sort of the meat of, our panel today is really sharing, those nuggets on what are some of the top media tactics where stories can be told, and are they good transacted programmatically or not? So Emily, and we'll just sort of go down, want to share some of your top tactics.
Yeah, I think number one is video, for sure. I think that if content is king, then video is definitely the heir to the throne. So I think that's the best way to tell a brand story programmatically. But another way that you can use programmatic to tell the brand story is driving people to your branded content through native ads. So that's another one. Branded content is obviously not programmatic, but you can use programmatic to drive people there. So native and video.
I was going to say the same things.
Yeah, I probably stole everyone answers.
Definitely agree, and I think video too, and I think also that element of, if you can get it in there, sequential messaging. So, if you can show that video, or even if you get someone to the site, they didn't really engage that long, if you can, re-message them, but show them a video that's going to kind of pull them in a little bit more and kind of get more of your story out there. And then also native video, I feel like is a huge up-and-coming area where, it is blending those two together, where, you have that content in that native format, and I just think native is really going to blow up over the next year.
I always assume that people have other things to do than look at what we have to serve them up online, and that's just unfortunate but true. But you touched on sequencing, and that's kind of a cool tool through the ad server, and so if many of you may be doing it, if not, you should take a look at it. There's a good opportunity to serve up different messages at different times. So the first 10 impressions show this, the next 11 through 20 show this message, 21 plus maybe you show a more direct response ad. And I think that the way that we look at it is kind of like dating. You don't show up at the first date and drop down on one knee and ask to get married. You have to go out to dinner and you bring flowers and you show your best side and you tell a funny joke and all these things. So you have to kind of warm it up, and it gives a great opportunity for the creatives to kind of be able to tell that story in a humanizing way. People aren't as nice as to be aware, consider, and then purchase right away. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So depending on if they go to the site, if they do a certain action, if they've watched certain videos to completion, you can kind of either keep them on that flow or start them back over again and retell the story. So using technology in a smart way to kind of set where you want different pieces of that ad to live and show to them, I think is a good way to not just club people over the head with your message to book now, buy now, find out more.
Well, it's interesting. I do a lot of B2B work, and that's a lot of nurturing, the nurture story and the marketing automation platforms, but the creative driving to the site once they get into the database, then there's this whole nurture strategy and a lot of time spent producing content to nurture that existing person in your database. But what you're talking about, Matt, is let's create a nurture strategy that sits more top of the funnel, that it doesn't even happen until they might never even get to your site until that 25th ad.
99.92% of people aren't going to click on the ad or do something with it, right? So let's view it as a visual billboard on digital and treat it as such. And because we do have everything trackable, we can still tell that they saw it, and then later on they're scared of clicking on an ad, so they open up a new tab and then they type it in. They either go directly to the site or they go and they do a search and then they click on the branded search, and so that gets all the credit. But really, it's what Corinne's team did before that got them to even do any of that stuff. So yeah, if we can bring it up a little bit, we can hopefully bring in more people of interest without just kind of going 0 to 60 right away.
And so challenging to get your, from a marketer to buy into this long tail marathon approach versus that bottom line. Like, hey, hold on. It might take 9 months to get someone to come to the site. To really invest in that nurture stream is I would say one of the biggest challenges in actually putting that to fruition.
I think too a lot, even before someone does hit their site, with all the new technology coming out, you can continue to tell that story, right? We have a client who just started running TV, and we obviously see huge surges in the traffic on the website and everything like that, but as a media team, we're kind of strategizing how can we enhance that, and with the technologies that are out there now, we can literally retarget people who have seen that commercial. So you don't even have to care if they're interested. You could continue to tell that story and try and push it towards them before they even hit the site or really engage with your brand, and really just tell it before you even get into that nurture stream.
In some cases, you can even skip the site almost altogether, especially with one of my clients. They're a home builder, and so the process is obviously really long. But we've used like Facebook lead ads where you can just sign a form right there from Facebook, and they've never gone to the site, and then they're going to get contacted by the salesperson. So I've seen a lot of times where you can skip the site altogether.
How do you see that, Corinne? In your world, from a branding, like all these different tactics out there, where do you gravitate? Where does do you look towards the media team to tell you, okay, these are the branding tactics, and this is how we're going to go to, what's your perspective?
Yeah, the branding tactics usually don't come that much in play. We are more focused on actually what I forgot your name, Matt. What Matt was saying, and that's to actually tell the story. And we can do that in a variety of ways. And as a creative, we love to do it with a video, like as you guys were saying. But it's actually more effective if you do it in small increments, small little step sequencing, and that way you can tell the story much, much broader. If not all brands embrace that, and you need to have you just need to have longer conversations with the client. But when you show the results and you show how it actually works, the times of clicking on a banner are gone. It's more about what content you serve up and how do you attract the consumer. So. don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Gary Vee. He's owns an agency in New York or Boston. But anyway, very, very, insightful guy around marketing. And he talks about transaction. If you're all about the transaction, you'll always be in the transaction, and you will never get out of the transaction and be able to go and golf, in a leisure, have leisure time. But if you look at the overall, marathon and producing great content and getting the story out there and getting your consumers to trust you, and you're an expert in this actual field through all the different types of content, then the transactions will organically just come in. And it's really insightful because, especially in the digital platform, we were set up to be a direct response platform from the onset. It's all about that click to conversion. And so I'm really because IMM is more of a DR performance-based. How do you tell that story while also maintaining your client's vision for that transaction?
Yeah, so it's sometimes I feel at IMM we are too attached to the funnel, where you are in the funnel, you're at the bottom of the funnel, you're in the middle of the funnel, you're on the top of the funnel. Sometimes nowadays it's not anymore that people are rigidly going along the funnel. There are too many data points. There's too many times you connect to the consumer. The ability to connect to the consumer is limitless. So they might be seeing things at all different times, at all different moments of their day. And so I think our approach is from the bottom up. And that is something that we firmly believe in because it drives results and it drives sales. But it's not the only answer. So there is times that there are so many times where you approach it from, you go into to the funnel from awareness, and you quickly go down the funnel to a direct sale or a DR ad. And that's, it is a bottoms-up approach, but it's not something that is rigid, and that's what I think we sometimes vary from, even though bottoms up means from the bottom up to the funnel. But the consumer nowadays is not rigid, so we have to be flexible with it.
Great. Suzanne, sorry to interject. It's
Yep.
Ross back here. Just wanted to make sure we had a little bit of time for audience Q&A. So if anybody here has a question, you can, we got one right here. So just want to let you, please just tell us who you are and where you're working.
Fantastic. I'm Mike Olson with Centro. I'd love to hear from everyone really quick. What % of your programmatic spend is done via self-service tools where you guys are actually pulling the levers versus sending insertion orders to your programmatic vendors? And then part two of that, are you guys transparent with those programmatic vendors on your tech fees that you're taking? And if you are you transparent to your clients regarding those tech fees?
Emily?
100% managed service, so I don't have follow-up with the fees, I guess, because we usually just do managed services.
So we, percentage-wise, I think we're taking maybe about 25% we're actually managing in-house, and then the rest is managed service for our clients. Fee-wise, same thing.
Yeah, probably 99% in-house. We've kind of gone out to outside before, and I think we like some of the flexibility that's afforded from pulling those levers. And yeah, it all becomes part of the scope of work that you agree with the clients up front.
I don't know. Luke?
99%.
There you go, 99%.
Hi, Joe Mandisi from MediaPost. So great panel. I'm glad you guys have all embraced this, what'd you call it, tool or technique? But so back to the question here of the panel. You talked a lot about how programmatic media can enable advertising and storytelling. Are you doing anything with actual programmatic advertising, AI, creative versioning, where technology is driving the story itself, not media formats, not audience buying, but where the programmatic technology is actually driving the story. And if you have any examples of how you're doing it, maybe like early chatbot or conversational marketing or anything like that that you're doing.
We do use certain techniques. I will make it very short because I think Matt has more to say about this. We do use different technologies, social listening, that type of stuff that actually tells the story without us doing it. Is purely technology driven. So when a consumer says something on Twitter, I'm sitting in this, it's a student, I'm sitting in this class and I'm ravenously hungry. I wish it was, I wish there was, some food around here. With social listening, and it's purely technical, an answer can come to them and it's from a brand like Boston Market and say, hey, there's a 1 mile up the road, you can grab some lunch, it's on us, here's a coupon, and there you go. And then the perfect resolution of this exchange of storytelling would be that the actual consumer then replies to Boston Market and says, wait, thank you for this coupon, solution solved, blah, blah, blah. So that's a type of storytelling that is purely relying on technology.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, panel. We're out of time. That was great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So next, it's my great pleasure to welcome our opening keynote interview to the stage. Chuck Olney is the Director of Business Development for Sports Authority Field at Mile High for the world champion Denver Broncos. He and I will discuss remarketing to a loyal, engaged user base via digital channels, cross-promotion with the stadium's many sports and entertainment partners, and how good old-fashioned TV and radio advertising still move the needle for this brand. So please welcome Chuck to the stage. I'll be interviewing him, so I'll get up with him.
Good morning. Is everyone from Denver, or is there a diverse crowd in here today? By show of hands, who's from Denver? All right.
Oh, wow.
Let's go, Broncos.
Oh, this is on. All right, now it's on. Great. Well, Chuck, thanks for being here. How you doing today?
So far, so good. Thanks
So
for
far,
having me.
so good. Great. Good to hear. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your role with Mile High and the Broncos? It's a kind of dual role, as I understand, right?
You got it. We like to wear a lot of different hats over
Okay.
there. So I'm the Director of Business Development for the stadium, and we have one big happy umbrella over there, one big happy family. So we'll basically drive all the revenue behind the stadium events, so public events, private events. One of my key roles is event acquisition. So if we're out trying to find a new rugby match, a new soccer game, whatever it may be that's coming on into the building, private events as well. Anything that we can do on the event acquisition side to then harness the events, lock down the events, and then drive revenue around the event. That's really our goal. So, I guess a great example would be, working with different types of music promoters in town, AEG, Live Nation. Anytime that we can go and work with some of these other partners in our community and then lock down, let's say, a Kenny Chesney concert. We'll basically take that event and then drive as much revenue around that event as we can. So, in the promotional world, there's a couple different ways that you can bend, deals coming into our building. You can either buy events, in which case you're the promoter and you try to drive as much revenue around those events that you can, or you can basically just have a stadium rental, right? So, in that point, usually it's up to the promoter to drive all the revenue back to the artists and the promoters and the bands and whatnot. We love taking risk on events because with risk, there's typically more upside for us, right? So, Kenny Chesney example. We love playing quarterback on events like that because we'll be able to help promote, we'll be able to help sell partnerships, sponsorships, we'll drive all the media sales around those events, which really makes it fun for us to put on our music promoter hats, being venue people.
Right. So some of these events that you do are sort of collaborative, and then others are sort of like stadium rentals. Do you have a marketing budget for just in both cases, or is your marketing just for the collaborations?
Yeah, typically we'll have a marketing budget for the events that we'll purchase. So when we're working with like an AEG, like a Messina group out of Texas to harness, let's say a Luke Bryan show or a Kenny Chesney show, we'll end up putting a budget together, because since we bought that show, it's then up to us to sell around that show. And when I say sell, we'll try to figure out all the different revenue streams that we have coming into the building. The two primary revenue streams are ticket sales and sponsorship sales. Of course, there's ancillary revenues as well. So you're talking food, beverage, parking, all of the traditional revenue streams. But at the end of the day, it'll be our job to actually drive the ticket revenue. And in terms of ticket revenue, we will always look to media partners to be able to make sure that there's not only awareness, but that we're tracking every penny that we're spending to make sure that we're selling out as many seats as we can in our building.
Right. So we'll get to your cross promotion stuff in a little bit. Just wanted to say, ask you quickly, where does digital marketing and advertising fit into your particular marketing mix? Sort of how does it break down?
Yeah. So I mean, typically we'll have a blend, but we really have started to see the pendulum swing towards digital and social a lot more than we used to, let's say 5 years ago. Of course, when you're promoting, let's say, a country music show, you always think that you know your target demographics. You think it's straight country people, but once you get to these events, you realize that it's everybody under the sun. It's the 22-year-old cowboy from Wyoming who wants to shine up his boots and come on down and have some fun and chase girls, right? I mean, there's that guy. But even though you're buying for the let's say the 35-year-old female who loves Kenny Chesney and has Kenny Chesney in her Facebook profile, and you think that's the perfect buy, then all of a sudden you get to these shows, you really have to analyze the different types of people that are coming. So when it comes to programmatic and it comes to I guess more of the diverse approach of trying to figure out, okay, how do we get into how do we get the Snapchats out to the right people? How do we get sponsored posts within different Facebook feeds, within different Twitter feeds? It really becomes a challenge, and you really have to be strategic in terms of where you're spending your dollars.
Mm-hmm. So how are you reaching the first guy that you mentioned, the one who's chasing girls and going to the show and coming from Wyoming?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, my job is to play quarterback with all the different types of assets and resources that the Broncos have, that the stadium has, et cetera. So if we have, let's say, a Broncos Facebook account or Broncos Twitter account, our website, our players, whatever we can do to basically make sure that we're reaching the right audience at the right time, that's my job. So we'll not only work with radio, TV, outdoor advertising, using our own internal feeds. We'll make sure that we're trying to hit the right people. But a lot of the research that we've done is based around audience demographic figures from our partner Ticketmaster. So when anyone purchases a concert ticket, an event ticket to other events, we'll work with Ticketmaster to then go back to the credit card companies, do the full breakdown in terms of what their profile is, so that we know exactly who's coming. So once we kind of digest that information, we'll then put our whole budget together and then get that content and get that messaging out the door to the right people. So back to the cowboy, we typically will only spend a little bit of dollars trying to find that one person, because it's a smaller piece of the pie. But again, it's our job to control that content, to make sure that we are hitting the Facebook feeds of that 35-year-old female. And maybe she's not the perfect target, but that's what we love about the online side, and that's what we love about the social side, because even if she's not the perfect target, and even though she may just be a full hardcore Broncos season ticket holder, we know that she may have a neighbor down the street, or she may share that with somebody who is a huge country music fan, or maybe they want to put together a limo, for the night and have a fun girls' night out. So a lot of times we're not as specific as we may need to be, but we love just making sure that we're reaching the right people, so they can then share along and share away, if you will.
Great. So let's take a step back and look at your digital mix in particular, because we like digital here. How much of your budget do you allocate to each sort of channel or tactic? And what's the sort of relative ROI that you have for each of these components?
Yeah, good question. I mean, typically, if we have, if you take a mix of, let's say, $100,000 to promote a concert, I mean, we'll break it down about 70-30 in terms of revenue, anyway. So let's say, 70K towards traditional, 30K towards social, and really just because social is so much more affordable, and we can track it. And I mean, I think that pendulum has kind of swung a little bit. We used to be around 10%; it's jumped up to about 30% in the last 5 years, which is great. But I mean, let's say you are promoting a country show. Old school radio still is a great awareness piece for us. So for those of us that are here in Denver, the KYGOs, the Wolves, any sort of country music station, it's still great to make sure that the jocks are talking it up, and then they're driving back to their Facebook pages, that they're driving back to their promotional ways of getting people to sign up for their databases, that they can then email back out, hey, this is when the concert is, here's how you buy a ticket. So even though it's kind of general awareness on the radio side, we still love the fact that a lot of different types of media companies, including radio stations, will have social into their packaging, into their mixes. So even if we only spend $5 or $10 grand with a radio station, we know that we're getting a lot of bang for our buck, not only being on air, but leveraging their email databases, leveraging their social platforms. Maybe we're building a database together so that we can go help sell another sponsor and deliver those contact names back to whomever that sponsor may be. So it really is a unique mix.
Yeah, great. So we want to talk about social, and we want to talk about email as well. But let's start off with a little bit talking about your CRM program, which is pretty extensive, I imagine. You have season ticket holders, you have loyal customers. Tell us about the scope of the program a little bit, the CRM program, and how many people in your database, if you would, and what you know about them, and how you can use the retargeting for cross promotion and other things.
Sure. Yeah, we're really lucky just being part of the Broncos organization. So, essentially, we'll leverage every Broncos platform that we have. So whether it's Broncos, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, a lot of times we'll leverage the players as well to try to control our own content to create that association between, let's say, a music artist coming into town with one of our players. So it's less about, I guess I'll talk less about managing our CRM system, but more about how we can make sure that we're shooting every bullet that we can to make sure that we're reaching everybody within our platform. So, I guess a great example would be last time we had Kenny Chesney in town. He came out early. We made sure that we were going to film him with Peyton Manning out on the practice field throwing and catching football. So Peyton would be throwing, Kenny was catching. But this was great because we got to control our own content behind this. So we're out at UC Health Training Center. Peyton's throwing Kenny Chesney footballs. We're filming everything after their workout session. Peyton's like, hey, come on down. Make sure that you're checking out Kenny on stage tomorrow night at Sports Authority Field at Mile High. So once we have that footage in the can, we're able to basically control our content and send that through the Broncos Facebook feeds. We're able to send that through the Twitter feeds. We're able to Snapchat that out to all the people who are following on the Broncos side. So I think controlling content is huge in our side, and then creating that association. So a lot of our users and a lot of our followers, they're obviously huge football fans, but at the same time, if you can create that association with Kenny and Peyton and the Broncos together, it already strengthens your message. So maybe they were on the fence about going down to see a country music show, but then once Peyton steps up and they see that content, and as long as we're creative with it and can sell it through the right way, we're seeing a lot of traction on that side.
So with that kind of cross promotion effort, you probably did you have Kenny and Peyton using their social media channels as well to sort of cross promote?
Yeah, so it was on Kenny's channel.
On Kenny's channel. Okay.
I don't know if Peyton has any channels or not.
Right.
He's too busy doing TV commercials.
Yeah, where he's in his bathrobe. Yeah,
eating pizza.
Right on. And how did Kenny do on the catch? Did he catch? The
Kenny's actually a great athlete.
Good athlete?
Yeah, he used to be a sports star. I think he found his calling though. He's doing great on stage.
All right, cool. How do you know how often to re-engage your customers, your existing loyal customers, with event marketing, with other events outside of football?
Yeah, great question. You know, that's always the battle that I have, trying to play quarterback with all of our other teams, especially on the social side. I mean, they'll always, you know, remind me that we can't send a soccer message or a music concert message or a lacrosse message every 3 days. I mean, that's my job, to make sure that people are buying tickets and we're appeasing our sponsors and getting impressions and eyeballs up. So I mean, they'll usually reel me in and make sure that there's some kind of formula and some kind of method to our madness, where, you know, we'll kind of look at a lot of our media campaigns maybe 4 months out, leading all the way into the show. So, you know, if we're 4 months out, there may be a message once every 3 weeks, and then once we hit about, you know, 8 weeks out, the frequency steps up a little bit. So we'll be maybe once a week from there, and then, you know, the week leading into a show, it's probably every day on every channel that we have on the social side. Emails, it's probably more of, you know, once every 2 weeks leading on in. So it really just depends a lot on how the meter is looking in terms of tickets being sold and in terms of how many impressions we've guaranteed sponsors that are coming on into the mix. So I'd love to say there's a set formula, but there's really not. It's more of just a temperature check.
And how is social media informing, you know, that effort? Because you've got a big social media presence, and how do you regard social media right now? You said it grew from what, 10 to 30% of
in terms of our ad spends. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess on our ad spend side, we've really focused more on Facebook advertising more than any other channel right now, just because of keywords and being able to really pinpoint and target, you know, the different types of events that we have coming on in. So if we have, let's say, the Mexico national soccer team coming into play, we know who's following Mexico national soccer. If you've got, you know, soccer in your profile, we're happy to spend as many pennies as we can to make sure that we're reaching those folks. Same on the music concert side. So it seems like we're going back to this Kenny Chesney example a lot, but we'll find anyone on Facebook within, let's say, a 150-mile radius, to make sure that we're actually hitting those people that do have either Kenny Chesney or Luke Bryan or Zach Brown, or, you know, list your country music star within their profile, to make sure that we're serving them an ad. So we have concentrated a lot more, and really because we can track. Right, so I mean, all the bean counters in our office, they love the Facebook side, and then also we'll shift towards Pandora Radio quite a bit as well. Pandora Radio has been great to us, just in terms of being able to track and see all the click-throughs and being able to serve ads straight up on country channels. I mean, it's such an easy buy for us.
Mm-hmm. So the Kenny Chesney example has come up a few times. I think we have a video that we'd like to roll on, you know, one of his concerts in which Peyton made an appearance. So let's just have a look at that real quick.
Our life revolves around certain things. It revolves around family. It revolves around church. It revolves around school, football, friends, girls, and sports. And mainly football. And that's all we have. Yes, sir.
Guy's pretty excited. That was you, right?
That was me, yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's a great example of the kind of cross promotion you can do. Wondering how much of the Kenny Peyton cross promotion was contracted before, or how much of it was just kind of collaboration, and how much of it was like like, very meticulously contracted out.
It was pure collaboration. I mean, a lot of these stars. I mean, they've got their own schedules. They're going a million miles an hour. So to be able to land, Kenny at our training camp a couple days ahead of time is gold for us. I mean, as a promoter and as a marketer, you just beg and plead and do anything you can to get Kenny to fly in the day before, so that you can control that content and get that out the door to all those last minutes. People that may be on the fence, like, it's a stadium show. It's too far to drive. Hey, listen. I mean, if we can control that, and we can get the right message at the right time to get that person off the fence to come on down and buy a ticket and drive that revenue, that's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any other good examples outside of the Kenny Chesney one? I mean, how you're leveraging third parties, sort of owned and earned media, to drive people back to Denver and to Mile High?
Oh, let's see. We run our own professional outdoor lacrosse team called the Denver Outlaws as well. So that's been a real challenge. I think on the Broncos standpoint, I mean, the Broncos are kind of the 800-pound gorilla in terms of the sports team in this town, which we're very fortunate for. We know that we're kind of on top of the bubble right now, but at some point that bubble is going to break. So I mean, we always try to make sure that we're engaging our fans and our customers all the time with value adds, right? So. On the Broncos budget side, they receive a check of, I don't know, $200 million every year from the league, as does every NFL team, all 32 teams out there. So on the budgeting side, a lot of these pro football teams, they're doing just fine, right? But when you get down to kind of that minor league sports team, back to the Denver Outlaws lacrosse team, there's no check coming from the league. There's no TV rights revenues coming on in. So you really have to grind out every dollar that you have. So that's ticket sales, that's sponsorship sales. It's all the ancillary dollars as well. So the media spends get to be a lot more scrutinized at that point. So to try to unearth a new lacrosse fan is very challenging. So a lot of times what we'll try to do is leverage like the Broncos accounts to make sure that people are coming down to maybe check out a new sport and to come to Mile High for the first time. So sometimes you can't find a ticket to a Broncos game. Maybe another time you can find a ticket, but they're too expensive. So that's what we love about our building. It's a world-class sports arena. So when we stepped into the ring with pro outdoor lacrosse, we said this is going to be a great opportunity for a $15 ticket to come on down and see a niche sport that's really on the rise. But as a stadium that's half owned by the city and half owned by our owner, we need to do our job to make sure that we're putting people through the turnstiles, so that we're getting money back to the Metropolitan Football Stadium District along with our owners. So, anytime that we can leverage the Broncos' social media accounts to say, hey, come and check out lacrosse for the first time, and maybe we've got a Broncos player at a game to sign autographs for people to help drive traffic, or anything that we can do to say, hey, listen, if you renew your let's say Broncos season tickets for the year, you'll get a couple free tickets to this new pro outdoor lacrosse team. Really, anything that we can do to kind of leverage the platform that we have is what we'll do.
Cool. So we haven't talked about mobile yet. How are you regarding mobile in your responsibilities? I mean, do you have an app? Are you converting? How are you converting on mobile versus desktop versus other channels?
Yeah, good question. So we have two apps on the Broncos side. We have a Stadium app and we have a Broncos app. We're trying to do a little bit more on the Stadium app side. I mean, between beacon technology coming through the stadium, and then also just throughput in terms of getting people into the building quicker, and then studying, understanding when they're purchasing, what they're purchasing. So if you're coming on in and you're buying a beer, a hot dog, a jersey for your son or your daughter, whatever it may be, we're trying to study the pattern. So we know exactly where you park. We know that you take the light rail in. We know what gate you come on in. We know exactly where your purchase points are. So we're trying to take all that data and then put that data back through the app, so that once you're inside the stadium, we know when to hit you or when to send some kind of notification to ping you to say, hey, it's 2-for-1 beers. Come on into the stadium early, because that's always one of our keys. Once the stadium gates open, that's when our watch starts. I mean, we know that we only have consumers for so long once you're inside the stadium, and that's our time to generate as much revenue as we can. So anything we can do to entice people to come into the stadium a little bit early and buy that beer or buy that soft pretzel, whatever it may be, that's really important to us on the app side. But I guess another good example, I mean, would be the actual ticket purchase itself, right? So we'll work with Ticketmaster to understand how many people are actually using mobile versus desktop to buy tickets. And I mean, I think the number is now like 88-90% of people will actually buy tickets on their phones now versus on their desktop. So a lot of times we'll really try to make sure that we're hitting people during times when they are on their phone and they can concentrate. So in the middle of the day, I think we all hustle pretty hard in this room, right? It's hard to buy a ticket in the middle of the day. You've got a million things going on. So if we can hit people in the evening time, call it 6 to 9 p.m. to say, oh, that's right, I forgot that Mexico soccer's coming. I told my kids I'd buy those tickets, or I told my friends that I would jump on the tickets. We can remind them with a ticket where it's just a quick link within their feed somehow, so that they actually have the 4 minutes to click through and buy that ticket. We'll study all the purchase times and when people are buying tickets so that we serve that ad at the right time.
And I guess, how do you know the extent to which all these efforts work? In other words, like, do you have an attribution system telling you sort of, what brought people down the funnel to eventually convert on, say, a mobile device?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll track sales through our Ticketmaster app. It's called Ticker. So we'll understand when people are purchasing tickets. But then on the old school side, we'll also use promo codes. So we'll say, hey, listen, if we're sending out a message to let's say the KYGO database, we'll say log on to Ticketmaster and use keyword KYGO. So that way we can go back and do a full accounting of who's purchasing the tickets and where they're coming from.
And I know you mentioned at the beginning that you allocate a lot of your budget to TV and radio. What did you say it was? It was.
Well, shoot, if we're at that 70-30 split, it's really broken down on the revenue side, and that's just because TV is more expensive.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's it. I think a lot of times TV is still great for the general awareness piece, but right now we'll buy weather, we'll buy sports. So it's nothing crazy or new, but at the same time, just to build that awareness and to make sure that we're packaging those buys with the back end on the social side or on the digital side with a lot of these different TV stations, that still gets us more bang for the buck. So while it feels like somewhat of a force to get the 30-second old school TV spot in there, on the back end, there's also the TV station's also sending out emails for us. They're also posting on their feed. So if we can control that content and get Kenny and Peyton together, and we can give that clip to 9 News or a Channel 7, they're happy to put that up on their Twitter feed or their Facebook account. So it's kind of a full package, if you will.
And just last question, I guess, from me before we open it up to folks in the audience. Why do you think those channels, TV and radio particularly, at a local level remain so important, despite newer digital and newer and sort of maybe channels with better targeting that are in digital? Why do you think that is?
I don't know if important's the right word, but shoot, when you're trying to reach as many people as you can and get all the different impressions out there, and no one can seem to harness, well, that's exactly who I'm looking for. It really does feel like more of a blend and more of a bleed across all platforms to make sure that you are getting the right person. So if it is TV, radio, social, et cetera, everyone's on the move so much these days. So again, we're not as specific as I guess we could be. But I guess that's the beauty of selling concert tickets or sports tickets, is that you may not have to reach the exact right person in order for them to at least get the message and then share it or talk it up or have that word of mouth advertising go on out the door to talk about that next big event coming on in.
Yeah, earned media. All right, so I got to hop down here and take the hand mic, and we'll do questions from the audience if you all have any for Chuck here. 1 second.
Ross, I got it here. If you want to stay up there, I got this. Come on.
I'll stay up
I got
here
2
then.
legs.
Thanks, John.
I do it on 1 leg for you, just for you. You want to have
Show
any
us.
questions? Questions. This man, I know Joe. Local Joe. Tell him who you are, where you're from.
Joe Salvador with Epiphany. So how much of your focus is in Colorado versus outside of Colorado? Yeah.
Great question. I guess it really depends on what event we're talking about, right? So for a lot of these country music shows, we'll usually do that 150-mile radius. That's kind of where our radius goes to on the advertising side. However, at the same time, we'll work with partners like Visit Denver and Denver Sports that do different types of campaigns across the country to try to get people to come to our city and spend money on hotel nights and eating in restaurants. So we will work with partners like that to say, hey, listen, Chicago, San Francisco, whomever it is, like if this is a unique event, call it the Mexican soccer team that's coming on in this summer. We realize that Denver has a great population to come and be fans of that. that type of event, but we'll also look at the different pockets down in Mexico or California or wherever that fan base may be. And we'll make sure that we're working with those types of partners to drive those folks to the city to help our partners at the city, and then also buy the tickets. I guess on the music concert side, it's a little bit trickier because I mean let's say Zach Brown has a 20-stop tour next year, and we've got Zach coming to the stadium. If you're living in San Francisco and he's going to AT&T Park, then you're probably not coming to Denver unless you're a monster fan. So a lot of times it's like, well, let's figure out how much revenue we're actually going to spend or drive, in terms of what that marketing allotment's going to be outside of Denver. So, great question. I don't know if there's an actual percentage breakdown. So, I mean, obviously we'll concentrate a lot on this city. I mean, this city is growing like crazy. So many new people moving here. But yeah, I mean, I would say we would concentrate heavily on this market before we start going outside the walls.
Okay, I've got one more
Yeah,
right here.
one more question. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Beth Sanders. I'm from Supply. So you mentioned that you have 70-30 and that it used to be 10% in social and it grew to 30. So my first question is, what metrics were you looking at that helped convince you that you should increase it? So what was the KPI? And then my second question is, have you ever considered display or search or video or other tactics?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer the first one. Just in terms of the media spend, I think we just found that we were able to track and we were able to really understand all the different types of click-throughs, between Pandora Media, between Facebook, and we're able to understand how many people we're reaching and who's sharing our content, et cetera. So that was really the main goal. You work with our partners at Ticketmaster, and they tell you exactly where people are coming from. So once you understand that people are coming from online, they are coming from social, et cetera, it's kind of the no-brainer of, well, this is where we need to be careful with our pennies, and this is how we need to spend them. And then the second part to your question was. Yeah, I mean, on the search side, shoot, it feels like being at Mile High Stadium and with these bigger events coming on through. I mean, we tend to pop to the top no matter what. So I mean, it feels like if we're trying to be strategic with our pennies, it just on the search side, it's never really made sense because we haven't needed to, if that makes sense, I guess. Yeah, and then on the display side, do you mean more like on TV or billboards or outdoor or? Oh, sure, yeah. So typically, I mean, we'll work with our different types of media partners just to make sure that we're hitting their channels, and that's really the extent of it. So working with our TV partners, working with our internet partners, et cetera. So there hasn't really been a big push on that side for us yet, but maybe it's coming.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chuck. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Which you'll note is ad blocking. Ad blocking is certainly a thing, and it's here to stay. How do we mitigate the damage it's doing to our industry? Why? By creating a better ad experience, say many industry watchers. But what does a better ad experience look like? Well, here to ask these and other questions, we asked David Sladen, a former advertising executive who is now the executive director and founder, Interaction Design, MA, Department of Advertising, Public Relations, and Media Design, the University of Colorado at Boulder. Please welcome David and his panel.
Got it. Okay. First of all, I have to apologize for screwing up your coffee break. I have another thing going on that I have to get to, so if you need to walk in and out drinking coffee, that's fine. Thank you so much. What I'd like to do is talk about how we're going to structure this discussion today, and definitely leave time for questions and answers. What I think we should do is we'll throw out a rough organization of begin with problems that have been caused by ad blocking, and then so it doesn't sound like perpetual whining, we'll move on to a section called opportunities, okay, to see what this might do, because it's definitely a disruption, but does it lead to a transformation that may finally change certain ongoing basically archival effects of advertising and the business model. So first of all, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Nick.
Thanks, David. Nick Williams. I'm the manager of the media and design team at Digital Fusion. We're an agency based in Lakewood. At the core, kind of what we do is help brands establish their marketing stack, marketing technology stack. And then just kind of over a decade plus of experience, we've added a full production studio on the side. So we're developing video content, animations, et cetera, to help kind of push data and content through these marketing platforms.
And my name is Richard Jones. I'm the CEO of a Denver-based tech company called Weigh-In. And Weigh-In effectively has a platform that helps marketers create interactive marketing experiences that can be published across many different channels, including interactive ads.
And I'll amend my bio just a little bit. Yes, I am a professor at University of Colorado. What we do is advanced projects work in an entirely studio environment. I'm also CCO of the Herald Project based in San Francisco. I have for the last maybe 10, 12 years been what we would only call a special ops creative problem solver and worked with a lot of different groups, including Omnicom and so on and so on. So to begin the discussion, what has this done, okay, to advertising? What has it done to advertising? And it's also highly affected publishers and content.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from our side, I think we've seen some seismic shifts. The growth of ad blocking has been extremely quickly. I mean, what, 25% or something of the population now have an ad blocker. And where we've seen it probably felt the most keenly is we work with about 300 or 400 different media companies. Everyone from CNN to Mail Online to Scripps and Discovery and all sorts of different publishers. And obviously they've found it extremely difficult because ad blocking has grown, and a big part of their digital revenue growth was obviously monetizing their digital real estate. And they've been losing significant amounts of advertising dollars because of ad blocking. And so they're in the maelstrom of trying to work out what is their strategy, how do they respond. And that's everything from the types of ads that they make available on their real estate, the way that they're approaching digital revenues, perhaps looking at other options like subscriptions for content. So I mean, it really has caused a seismic shift in terms of a problem. On the brand side, it's probably less keenly felt at this stage. I certainly think they have different options for the way they engage and connect with consumers. But if the growth carries on as it is, I mean, it's gonna be a seismic problem for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, and on our side, it's definitely disrupted business models as a whole. I think digital, we're still evolving, but a lot of traditional media pricing and models were applied to digital media placement. So for us, we're trying to have to figure out how do you price and sell experiences that aren't based on very quantifiable clicks, impressions, et cetera. So it's been on our end a challenge in itself to how to sell stories, how to sell experiences outside of very trackable metrics.
So I'll ask the big question. Do you think this is a total game changer, or can it be fixed? And that's a response I've seen with things like what IAB has done, and so on, trying to fix it. But do you think it can or should be fixed?
As you're asking that, I'm wondering, is ad blocking fixing advertising? Or do advertisers have to worry about trying to fix ad blocking? Because I think ad blocking is helping advertisers get back to what they do best, which is tell stories and create experiences. I think a lot of brands right now are, they need their technology and they need their data, and that's a process that takes time and money. But as brands meet those milestones, they're gonna have to start figuring out, okay, what do we do with all this technology? How do we start collecting data that's actionable, that's valuable to our clients, or how do we become more valuable to our consumers? And when you think about it in that way, you get back to some of the golden age, so to speak, of advertising and engaging with consumers. So I think it's moving advertising back into its kind of where it's come from, not that it's disrupting or breaking advertising.
I think that there is some need for regulation, because I think some of the ad blocking technologies out there they've been blocking all sorts of things, which aren't necessarily ads. Right? You know, they're blocking anything that's, you know, embedded into certain websites and stuff. So they're causing problems with certain services that are being delivered across the internet. And I think that is just a basic regulation issue. I mean, ad blocking is one thing, but just carte blanche blocking of stuff that isn't ads is crazy, and that does need to be stopped. So I think there is some abuse inherent in the system at the moment. But I would probably echo your issue in the sense that, you know, does it need to be fixed? You know, in that sense. I mean, the reason why consumers are adopting ad blocking is because the vast majority of advertising is extremely annoying. You know, the types of ad formats that they have, it's very disruptive. You know, I don't want to be disrupted. Quite often irrelevant. And so there is a latent problem there that needs to be fixed. And I think ad blocking is probably going to be the catalyst for a lot of the industry to start thinking about this chase for impressions, this crazy chase for impressions. Doesn't mean anything. You know, the whole point of digital is that it's interactive. You know, yet we're still treating it like some sort of quasi-TV medium to shove videos in front of people's faces when they don't want to see a video at that point in time. You know, that attitude to advertising has to change. And from my opinion, you know, when I look at the ad unit itself, you know, there's been lots and lots of innovation in how we can target an ad, you know, particularly coming from the social channels, getting really quite niche in terms of targeting of ads, and that's great. But the ad unit itself that they're targeting people with hasn't changed. It's how many ways can you push a video at somebody? You know, and when we talk to lots of senior marketers, they're bored with that. They want to do more. They want to have more of an interactive experience. They want to see that someone's really engaging with the content. They want to capture actionable data. And I think that's the opportunity that marketing has. But it requires a different look in terms of KPIs and measurement.
So are you saying that push is dead?
Not entirely, because when it's really well targeted, it can be relatively a good thing. So I think the innovation that's going on with targeting is definitely helping that. But I do think that the marketers themselves, when they actually look at what was successful, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we're in at senior board level at some of the world's biggest advertisers, and you'll still have, the CEO, you know, he wants this to have, you know, more impressions than anything else. It's all about reach and awareness. And so they're chasing these frameworks which annoy users. Right? At the end, it doesn't really serve any kind of purpose. Whereas they could have a really focused, targeted, interactive experience where the value of the advertising itself is only judged by the amount of people that engage, interact, and share that experience. And that takes a different view from the top in terms of what pressures they're pushing down on marketers.
Yeah, I don't think the push is dead. I just hope we evolve it to have a different name. The more data, the more technology, I think that brands can deliver anticipatory value with a push-type tactic. But again, that comes with having the right metrics in place, the right data, et cetera, to offer that value. But pulling that lever, I think, still fits.
Push kind of reminds me of unasked for advice, all right? When people tell, like love to say, you know what's wrong with you, type of thing. This makes me recall something that occurs to me every once in a while. Last time I worked with the Richards Group was in the late 90s, but every brief from the Richards Group began with this admonition. It said, people don't like ads, people don't want ads, what will make this one any different? So, getting to that, how can push turn from annoying interruptions to, oh, I didn't know that, and that's a cool thing I'd like to know, all right?
I mean, I think, it does come down to the quality of the experience and whether that individual is going to, enjoy or respect or be happy with engaging with that particular experience. But, you need to, the shift, I think, comes with thinking about developing the content to drive the experience, rather than I'm going to take something that was developed for TV, chop it up into a small fragment and then try to get mass reach through as many different channels as I possibly can. That's a mindset, and the mindset has to start with the development of the content itself. Now, I find it absolutely crazy when I'm looking at stuff like YouTube and I'm looking at a pre-roll ad, and the whole focus should be don't press the skip button. The whole content, the creative, the experience should be engaging with you to not to click that skip. And you can do lots of creative things to get people's attention to not do it. And as soon as they don't click the skip ad, they're into the experience. It should all be about how do I get them off this platform to engage in something where I can get some tangible value. Sell them a product, engage them in an experience, give them product recommendations, capture data, whatever it may be. But it does start with the creative, and I think advertising will get a lot better when on the digital channels, we're developing content that's specific for each digital channel, because Snapchat is extremely different to Twitter, is extremely different to Facebook, etc. Really genuine content built specifically for digital, all about the interactive experience and the call to action, and that isn't happening anywhere near as often it should. Yet you took someone like BuzzFeed, the experiences they deliver in different channels, it's all original content, it's very, very different. Why haven't brands wholeheartedly taken that approach? I don't know yet.
Yeah, I keep thinking of the digital journey or experience, kind of like the choose your own adventure, right? Books that we used to read, and you could go down a different path, and it's awesome because in the world we live in with technology, you could send them down so many different paths and create so many different experiences, whether you're leveraging display or social or what have you. But one of the challenges that I wanted to kind of speak of and mention today was if we don't have people on both sides of the partnership, the brand and the agency or whoever the vendor is, if they don't have that vision, if they don't understand or know what their engagement goals are, what they want out of that experience, it's still going to be very siloed push executions. And so it's hard to do, but it is fascinating to see that even BuzzFeed gets credit from Facebook for knowing how to tap into their entire platform, like user behaviors that are native to the platform, but publishers and brands still are kind of just operating as usual.
Isn't it because we're still suffering from massive TV hangover in digital? And unfortunately, because of entrenched behavior with the CMO, and he's worked his way up with his favorite agency building TV, trying to get the behavior change at that level is glacially slow. And it all comes from the big TV ad, and then digital gets 10% of the budget and is an afterthought, and it's the tail wagging the dog, which is utterly crazy in today's world. It should almost flip it the other way around, but we're still not there.
Do you think that's because it's still easier to think supply side rather than demand side?
It's a good question. That is a good question. I think it's probably, to some extent, a simpler explanation. And I just think humans in general exist in a business framework around relationships and about what they know. And I think the unfortunate thing is that in the really big advertisers, the most senior people have a certain pedigree and history, and that reflects in what they do with their budgets, and it hasn't changed.
So a conversation I've been having for several years now with a variety of agencies and design firms, Big Spaceship, Sudros, Deutsche LA, et cetera. They all want to do innovation. They're like, we really want to do innovation. And this has not succeeded at Google as well, the 20% rule. We found out that it's mostly engineers working on weekends at Google who do the 20% dedicated to innovation. And what we always hit, the wall we always hit, is that the current business model, which is billable hours, prevents them from doing innovation, because if they're not billing, they're losing money. Mm-hmm. So to what extent do you think the business model must change or could change?
Good question. I think it's challenging. I mean, just speaking on digital experiences or digital storytelling, I think one thing that we run into with our clients is each brand prioritizes platforms differently, allocates budgets differently, prioritizes storytelling versus direct call to action differently, and so there's no there's no like go-to framework in digital of how to successfully implement a campaign. We get a lot of requests that's like, okay, what's the framework? How are we going to use this data and this data and this data with this platform to get this result every single time? And the answer is there isn't an easy way to do that. And so to me, that I hear what you're saying for the innovation, because we get a lot of requests from us, for our clients saying, what's the solution to digital? And it's like, well, you have to create an experience. And it's the other thing that I think is different and that will continue to help drive innovation is this. A lot of traditional media, just because you're trying to reach as many people as possible, you're only creating one message that you want to put in front of one large audience. With our clients, we're developing 6 to 10 different versions of creatives, 6 to 10 different audiences, and different message with different audience. And our clients right now, they don't know how to track the success of that campaign, given that it's not one audience, one message, and how does that work? So there's a lot of elements from tech to data to even the vision that have to drive that innovation, because otherwise it is going to just stick to billable hours. There's just no other way for us to manage the work.
I think there could be a serious change which may impact a lot of this and the different types of experiences and how advertising is judged moving forward, which I'm fascinated by, and that is, talking to the really top folks at the world's biggest advertisers, so the big brand conglomerates, the Coca-Colas, the Kraft Heinz of the world, all those sorts of folks, Reckitt Benckiser, etc. They are. They're the ones that spend the majority of the money in advertising, right? They're the Uber budgets, spending billions of years. Now, those guys are really, really worried about disintermediation, which I find fascinating. So for the whole period of TV, led advertising, and latterly in digital, it didn't really matter that you didn't know who your consumers were, right? You get mass reach and awareness and stuff it out, stuff your videos out, stuff your TVs out, as broad a way as possible, and then when those individuals are wandering along the corridor of Walmart, they'll get brand recognition and they'll buy the product. I think things are changing now, because if you take someone like Dollar Shave Club, they've literally, with a viral video in 4 or 5 years, they've taken a big chunk, about 5% of the US shaving market, and they just got bought by Unilever. Now, they know exactly who their customers are. They know what products they're using. They know the frequency of consumption. They know if they've upsold them the cream and all the rest of it. They have they're data-rich organizations. Gillette, P&G, doesn't know who their consumers are. Completely not data-rich at all. Now, if you take that and you think about Amazon and the fact that there is a distribution warehouse within 20 miles of every single consumer, but it's 99% of the US population. Within 20 miles, there's an Amazon distribution warehouse. Those guys could go going private label on a whole series of things, and just 2 days ago, they announced they were absolutely killing it on private label. They're getting this stuff made cheaply from China. They're branding Amazon, and the world's biggest advertisers are in absolute fear of what could happen from Amazon as well, and these new entrants, these subscription businesses that are data rich. So they have to now know who their consumers are, which means that paid media advertising is going through this process of having to think of, how do I drive actionable data? How do I build out my CRM database of people that are buying my products or are interested in my products? That's an entirely different shift for advertising.
And building on that, it's my opinion that much, if not most, of the innovation in the last few years has come from not brand new business models or new businesses, but really a creative hack of existing models. And one of my favorite examples is Silvercar. How many of you are familiar with Silvercar? Yeah, it just imagine everything you hate about renting a car, and they've eliminated that. Okay. Yeah, it's all Audi A4s. You don't get charged for gas. It's great in so many ways. So, unpaid pitch for Silvercar, but it's a good example of going, WTF is wrong with this system, and going, we can hack it and make it better just through a simple app with a 3D barcode. Right? So there you go. Nick, you want to jump in on this, and then we need to move to opportunities.
Yeah, no, we can go right to opportunities.
Okay. So it's really interesting when you look into the multitude of problems that have been caused by ad blocking. It's affecting carriers. You know, you have carriers like AT&T and Verizon, because what it does is it overloads them and it slows down your signals. So it's affecting publishing in terms of the revenue model for publishing forever is basically customers pay less for something, you know, and the publishers get a part of that. We all know that model. So what are the opportunities where we look at this? And my perspective has always been to think of advertising, building on what you were saying, Richard, as site-specific art, all right? It gets its meaning and its value from where and when it comes to you, all right? So can we maybe launch on that? What are some good creative opportunities to take advantage of this rather than bemoan it?
Yeah, sure. Definitely from a external experience, so to speak. Technology is agnostic, right? I mean, the cell phone is just the current mode of consuming content. But I mean, just think about your Minority Reports and everything else of the world. You're going to be, you know, plugged in or eye scanned, or there's going to be something that's just a part of your being that can trigger, you know, proximity-based kind of media or engagement. So ad blocking, to me, when we think about it, is very phone or web specific. But if we think about media or consumer experiences to be triggered by external factors, or to have, you know, window displays or things like that, now, I mean, that's a huge opportunity to be in the right place and be relevant at the exact time, and now you don't have to worry about that content or that ad blocking serving that up. You're using the space and the time that they're in to kind of create that experience. So I think that's a really, you know, I look forward to that. It's going to be a cool kind of transition.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think there will be the emergence of a huge player in outdoor, you know, global. I mean, we see, you know, what Facebook and Google have done with their networks, but the cost of deploying digital connected screens in physical real-world locations is just dropping, which opens up the opportunity for out-of-home, in-venue interactive digital experiences like it never has before. And by the way, I think those experiences are some of the best forms of advertising that you could ever have. You know, if you're in a shop and you're interacting with a kind of virtual experience, that kind of you're really connecting with it. You're getting value from it. And there are networks being created where they are now renting, people like Mobility, they're actually renting to businesses the digital screens, they're doing the comms, they're deploying it, and they are effectively an ad network across loads of different physical retail spaces, and you can put your interactive experiences in there along with content and ads. So there's going to be lots of opportunity for digital engagement in a ubiquitous way across, you know, many different devices, many different places, and that's going to be very interesting. But I on the kind of main sort of, you know, phone and web-based experience, I think the main social networks themselves, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, etc., they are going to have to amend the ad units that they actually can deliver. I think there has to be innovation there. There has to be more engaging, interactive experiences that provide value to people rather than just another video that they're pushing at you. I think that will be a huge help, and I think we'll also take an increasing amount of where the digital budgets are actually going. So I think ad unit innovation is going to be a big thing.
Cool. And one thing that spurs in me is the opportunity for getting better information from users, and also something that's fascinated me for a while is you take a global brand like Nike, which is a global brand, but your experience of Nike and the way you use Nike in New York versus Amsterdam versus Berlin or Singapore on the ground is very different. Different cultures grow up around that and do that. So I think there's an opportunity in doing these physical digital integrated experiences in different places and venues, which takes me back to Nike Town originally. The original Nike Town is a great way to, it could be good for both sides. It localizes a global brand, it makes it more owned by local users, and it gives Nike better information about what to customize in different places. We have a few minutes for questions, I think, right? Maybe some answers.
Yeah, maybe. Questions from the audience? Anybody? Just a reminder, please, if you have one, to tell us who you are and where you work.
We got one back
there.
here. Yep.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Daniel Martin from Spear Communications, and you guys talk a lot about how a lot of people feel like these ads are intrusive to them, and the need to create an experience. And I just want to get your feedback. You know, my kind of experience is a lot of times the more an ad tries to create an experience, the more intrusive it feels to me, like they're trying just to take over my web page or something. And I want to know, how do you guys create a more experience-driven ad without being more intrusive or kind of interrupting what people are trying to do more?
Yeah, and I think that's the way that the ad is actually delivered to an individual. I mean, I can't stand those, half-page takeovers and stuff like that, where you're trying to read something and the ad just completely blocks your view. I think I still don't know why brands do that, because it doesn't give me a positive experience. I kind of don't like the brand that's forcing that experience and disrupting my whatever experience I was on, reading that article, whatever it may be. So I think those types of mechanisms, they have to change. They're the reasons why ad blocking has grown so quickly. But there is a whole set of different ways that you can deliver an elective experience, that people only go into it through election. You're signposting effectively for people to engage, and then they're going through an interactive story, and they can jump out any time. It's up to them. They're going through an experience. They're interacting with it. They're sharing it. It's something that they have value in. And there's many different ways of doing that. We did a campaign recently with the Blue Jays, which is basically, and it was integrated to DoubleClick. Actually, when you went in, there was a whole series of things that you could elect to go through. So you're kind of moving through this little journey. You're seeing content. You're actually creating and sharing shareable media, pictures of support for Blue Jays, and getting it out from that ad unit, and collecting PII data, for a chance to win some tickets, for example. That's a whole mini experience that you're elected in. There's a value exchange associated with it, and I think is wholeheartedly a better form of advertising, if you're focused on how many people actually engaged with it because they wanted to, and actually gave us data at the end, and there's a value exchange there. I think things like using new mediums is interesting. So Facebook Live, I think, is a great opportunity. It's not advertising as we know it, but creating a live broadcast around something that's some way correlated to a brand, or perhaps something that brand wants to be associated with, and getting people to vote via emojis in the comments. These things go like crazy, if you get the right subject. And you've got 4 hours that you can broadcast on Facebook Live for. That's a different type of, people elect to engage in it and vote and watch the video and all the rest of it. So there's many different opportunities, I think.
Yeah, just to echo that a little bit, if we think of the ad traditionally as selling a product, yeah, it's definitely disruptive. It gets in the way, if it's not relevant to me, there's no way I'm going to click it. But if we're using it as a gateway to an experience that someone can elect to take, and then we lead them, entertain them, keep them engaged, and then serve up kind of whatever it is in a much more, passive and native way to what the experience is, that's how we're approaching it with our clients. It's not easy because they want to see what the return is on this exact offer, right? So that's always a challenge, but we've been able to demonstrate through multiple different types of campaigns and programs that when you kind of lead with that experience and then kind of save the engagement or the call to action for a more appropriate time, that they see better kind of end results in the campaigns.
We know that it works, with these elective interactive campaigns, because over the last 3 or 4 years, we've collected 1 in 14 of the world's population that has gone through an interactive ad marketing experience built on our platform, and actually filled out a form and given marketing opt-ins to our brand partners and our media companies. So people will definitely do it, but you need to think of the experience, you need to think of the storytelling, and you need to think of the value exchange. And you need to have the KPIs and the metrics so that the CMO can, fully appreciate that somebody seeing half a video at the top of the page in Facebook, whilst they're not really looking at it and they're looking at pictures of their friends, that is not the same as somebody going through a 15-step process in an elective fashion, taking polls, sharing media, and giving you PII data. Right, there is a massive difference in marketing value, and that needs to be reflected in KPIs and at the board.
This reminds me a lot of something we learned at agency.com, which is one of the first agencies to break through in this. And we had a model that developed after about 2 years, which was find out what sucks and stop doing it. Okay. And so maybe as someone was saying, I think what we're seeing here is the need to move from what has been essentially an attention economy and an old business approach placed on a new technology and not taking advantage of what new technology can do, and moving to what Doc Searles, who I highly recommend you look at anything he's done, is calling the intention economy. In other words, like coming from a user-centered design perspective.
Great. I think we have one more question, if David, you have time for it. Yeah, go ahead. Just remind us who you are. And
Hi, James Hyde from Live Intent. I think I'm the only person that's not from Denver, so thanks for having me. You were talking about PII. Can you tell us about how much you're speaking with your clients about leveraging first-party and CRM data to inform their media buys, and maybe how that's changing away from the universe of cookies?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting question, because we're seeing a little bit of a trend, which is also associated with how advertisers are managing this process. And a lot of the big companies we work with, they're bringing in programmatic ad buying teams to have some control of that in-house. They're also deploying data management platforms like Crux and Lotame and Bluekai and others, which are really the tool that they're using for creating audience segmentation to then inform their media buying to drive more efficiency and better targeting. And a good use of DMP requires data, and data from multiple different sources. And so I think that when people have taken that journey, they're also then thinking about, okay, how do I actually start to increase the amount of first-party data that I have? How do I increase my CRM database? How do I drive marketing experiences that collect data that I can then use for driving better audience segmentation and targeting? And over the last 2 years, this has been a huge area of expenditure in our customer base, putting in those DMPs and thinking about data in a very different way. And literally 2.5 years ago, I could have gone and sat down with someone extremely senior at a company like Unilever and had them say, we don't care about who our customers are. Why do we need that? We can do all our targeting through Facebook. And the whole world has suddenly changed with things like Amazon private label and these new entrants. And I can go back to the same people and they're like, how do I get more people in my CRM database? Yeah. In fact, an interesting example, Reckitt Benckiser, and they're the same as everybody else, big brand conglomerate, 54 billion. 77% of US households will use 2 or more of their brand products every single day. In Europe, it's 87%. That is literally billions of touch points with consumers across the world every day. And they only have 9 million people in their database. And they're the same as all the other CPGs because they haven't focused on actually knowing who their consumers are and are now scrambling to find ways to actually get a direct relationship.
Yeah, and bring up Gary Vee again, but a lot of times when we approach clients, we're telling them they need to start thinking like a media company first, and then a grocery store or restaurant or something second. And a lot of that's because they don't have the data that they need about their consumers. So a lot of initiatives, and especially with email, right, because that's what most brands' sole existing own database, is to start sharing content and delivering emails that you can then get interaction with so that you can begin to segment and build out that data set and understand a little bit more about your consumers. We run into a lot like, well, what's the return on that? And it's like, well, do you want to be able to have a personalized engagement with your consumers, or are you just going to take this kind of blast approach? So kind of programs with the goal of obtaining data is a lot of kind of our brand awareness with clients right now, is solely so that they can start to build out who those customers are and what kinds of information they can use to be more relevant, more resonant when they're placing media or delivering that email.
Okay, great. I think we're out of time, but thank you, David, Richard, Nick. That was great. Thanks, guys. So we have arrived at a coffee break brought to us today by